Rain whispered over the ruins of Eldergrove, soft and merciless. Beneath the ancient pines, the ground was dark with blood and fallen leaves. Alpha Kale stood alone, chest heaving, golden eyes dimmed to dying embers. Around him, the bodies of his pack lay still, his brothers, his kin, his oath. The scent of betrayal hung heavier than smoke. He had fought for loyalty, for love, and lost both beneath the same moon. He pressed his palm to his chest, searching for the rhythm that had once been his strength. But there was nothing. Only silence. The curse his beta had spat with his last breath burned in Kale's mind. Your heart will not beat again until she calls your name. At first, Kale had laughed, a hollow sound in the wreckage of everything he knew. But when the laughter died, only pain remained. The air grew cold. His reflection in the rain-slick earth looked more beast than man. He sank to one knee, breath trembling as lightning split the clouds above. For a heartbeat, he saw her face again. His Luna, her eyes soft and shining with faith he no longer deserved. Then she was gone, fading like mist. The storm raged harder, a requiem of thunder and regret. Kale's hand fell to the blood-soaked soil, fingers curling as if he could hold the past in his grasp. He whispered her name once, hoarse and broken. The forest gave no answer. The curse was real. He could feel it, pulsing through the emptiness where life had been. The wolves that had survived watched from the shadows, their eyes dim, their howls rising in mourning. They sensed it too. Their alpha's heart had fallen silent. Kale rose, slowly, every movement a weight. His body lived, but his soul felt buried beneath the battlefield. A leader without a heartbeat was no alpha at all. He turned away, leaving behind the corpses in the moonlight, vanishing into the dark woods. Each step echoed through the silence, swallowed by fog. He did not know where he was going, only that he could not stay. The rain softened to a whisper as he disappeared among the trees. The forest closed around him. And soon, there was nothing left of the Alpha of Eldergrove but silence and a legend of loss. Miles away, in a quiet valley where the storm drifted gently across the rooftops, a young woman stirred in her sleep. Aria dreamed of a wolf beneath a silver moon, its eyes wild and human, calling to her from a distance she couldn't cross. She woke suddenly, gasping, her heart pounding as though it had heard another's rhythm within it. She sat upright in the dim candlelight, brushing damp hair from her forehead. Outside, the rain fell steady, tapping against the window like fingers. Her small wooden cottage smelled of herbs and smoke, a healer's home, safe and simple, yet tonight it felt haunted. The dream lingered, the name pulsed in her thoughts. Kale. She didn't know it, had never heard it spoken, yet when she whispered it aloud, the sound filled the room like a forgotten prayer. The fire flickered low. The air shifted. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Before we begin this story, tell us, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it there? Now, let's begin. Aria rose from her bed, wrapping her shawl tight. The storm outside had eased, but the forest beyond her window was unnervingly still. No owls called. No wind moved the branches. She stepped closer to the glass, peering into the darkness, her reflection pale against the night. Somewhere, something watched back. She pressed her fingers to her wrist, feeling the quick pulse beneath her skin. It was just a dream, she whispered, though she didn't believe it. Her voice trembled slightly, and as she turned from the window, the candle flame quivered, as if stirred by breath that wasn't hers. Aria was a healer, not a believer in curses or prophecies, yet deep down she felt it. The strange tug between her heartbeats, the echo of something calling from far away. Unseen by her, deep in the heart of Eldergrove, Kale collapsed beneath an old willow, his body shaking from exhaustion. Rain slid down his face, mingling with the blood that refused to clot. He tried to remember her face, the one whose love had died with his heartbeat, but the memory was fading into shadow. Then, faintly, through the steady fall of rain, he heard it. A whisper, soft, distant, and impossibly real. His name. Kale's eyes snapped open. The world around him trembled, the air shivering with power. His heart did not beat, but it ached as if trying to awaken. He gasped, a sound halfway between a growl and a sob, gripping the ground beneath him. The name lingered in the air, carried by the storm's breath. He rose slowly, the silver of his eyes flaring once beneath the thunderclouds. He did not know who had spoken, nor how her voice had reached him through the rain. But for the first time since the curse had taken him, Kale felt the faintest rhythm stir in his chest, like the echo of something remembered from another life. Far away, Aria shivered, clutching her shawl. The feeling wouldn't leave her. The dream, the name, the heartbeat. It was all too vivid, too alive. She moved toward the door, drawn by an instinct she couldn't explain. The forest whispered to her, soft and low, like a song calling her home. Kale took his first step toward that same forest path, the moonlight catching on the blood across his hands. Both of them moved beneath the same rain, unaware that destiny had already chosen its hour. And though neither knew it yet, the night his heart fell silent was the same night hers began to race. The storm had passed, leaving the forest heavy with silence. Mist clung to the branches, and the scent of wet pine filled the air. Aria stepped outside her cottage, the world still trembling from the night before. Her boots sank softly into the mud, her breath curling into the cold morning light. She couldn't shake the dream, nor the strange feeling that something inside her had changed. It wasn't fear exactly, more like recognition, as if her soul had remembered something her mind had forgotten. The forest around Eldergrove was ancient, older than the village itself. Aria had grown up with its songs, the whisper of leaves, the hum of the river, the steady rhythm of life hidden beneath bark and stone. But today, that rhythm felt off. There was a hollow note beneath the melody, a faint echo where the heart of the forest should have been. She followed the path toward the stream, gathering herbs as she went, though her thoughts were far away. The dream replayed in her mind. The wounded wolf beneath the moonlight, the sorrow in its eyes, the whisper of a name she still didn't understand. Kale. Even thinking it made her pulse skip. When she reached the edge of the stream, she knelt, dipping her fingers into the cold water. A shiver ran up her arm, not from the chill, but from something deeper. The reflection in the water rippled, and for an instant, she turned sharply, heart pounding, but there was nothing. Only the forest holding its breath. She exhaled slowly. "You're losing your mind, Aria," she whispered to herself. It was just a dream. But even as she said it, the forest seemed to disagree. The air thrummed faintly as though something unseen had stirred. A low sound drifted through the trees, a faint broken rhythm. She froze. It wasn't footsteps. It wasn't the river. It was softer, slower, and strangely familiar. A heartbeat. Not hers. Aria stood perfectly still, her pulse racing in her throat. The sound came again, barely audible but unmistakable, like the echo of life struggling to continue. Her instincts warred within her. She was a healer, drawn to pain as much as she feared it. Something or someone was hurt. She should go back, tell the village guard, wait for help. But something deep inside whispered that if she didn't go now, she'd lose whatever was calling her. She moved carefully, following the sound deeper into the woods. Branches brushed against her sleeves, and the mist thickened, curling around her ankles. The forest here was older, darker. Few villagers dared to wander this far. The stories said the wolves of Eldergrove once made their home beneath these trees. Aria had always thought them myths, until now. The heartbeat grew louder, steadier, guiding her through the fog. She pushed through a thicket and stumbled into a small clearing where moonlight still lingered, trapped beneath the branches. There, half buried in leaves and rain, lay a massive wolf. Its fur was dark as the night sky, matted with blood and mud. It wasn't dead, but it was close. Aria gasped softly, stepping closer. The creature's sides barely moved, each breath shallow and strained. She knelt slowly, her trembling hand hovering just above its muzzle. The air around it was heavy, ancient, humming with energy that made her skin prickle. "Easy," she whispered, though she didn't know if it could hear her. "I won't hurt you." The wolf's ear twitched. Its eyes opened, golden, piercing human. The kind of gaze that looked through, not at. For a moment, Aria couldn't breathe. Something deep within her recognized those eyes. She reached out, pressing her hand gently against the creature's chest. Beneath her palm, she felt it, the faint, flickering beat of a heart that refused to die. Her own heartbeat stumbled in reply, as though answering it. The forest around them seemed to hush. The wolf's breathing steadied slightly under her touch. She tore the hem of her cloak, pressing it against the wound on its shoulder. "Stay with me," she whispered. Please." The words left her mouth before she realized she was crying. The connection between them was strange, fragile, but undeniable. The wolf closed its eyes, a sound escaping its throat, half growl, half sigh. She could feel its warmth through her shaking fingers. The heartbeat she'd followed all this way grew stronger, syncing with her own. For a long moment, nothing else existed, just the rhythm of two lives meeting in the quiet after the storm. When she finally pulled her hand away, her skin glowed faintly, a shimmer fading into the mist. She stared at it, confused. The heartbeat she'd been hearing was gone now, or rather it had settled inside her, echoing somewhere beneath her ribs. "I'll help you," she murmured, though she didn't understand why. "You'll live," She wrapped the cloak around the wolf's massive form, straining to pull him toward her cart. Each movement was heavy, desperate. By the time she reached her cottage, dawn had begun to break. The sky turned pale silver, and the forest seemed to exhale as if relieved. She dragged him inside, laying him before the fire. His breaths were shallow, but steady. She fetched water, herbs, bandages, anything that might help. Her hands moved with instinct, but her thoughts spun wildly. Who was this creature? How had she found him? And why did his heartbeat feel like it belonged to her? As she cleaned the blood from his fur, she saw the faint glint of a silver pendant tangled in his mane, a wolf's head carved in ancient style, marked by runes she didn't know. She reached for it, tracing the lines with her fingertip, and felt a pulse beneath the charm. The wolf stirred, a low growl escaping its throat. His golden eyes flickered open again, and this time they didn't just look at her. They knew her. Aria froze, her breath caught between fear and awe. The fire crackled soft. The air between them felt alive, charged with something ancient and impossible. And though she didn't understand it yet, Aria realized that her life, the quiet, predictable one she'd always known, had just ended the moment she heard his heartbeat. When Kale awoke, the world was a blur of light and scent. Smoke from the fire, herbs drying on the rafters, and the faint sweetness of something human. Her. His muscles ached as though he'd been fighting the earth itself. The air pressed heavy against his skin. He tried to rise, but his limbs refused him, and when he lifted a hand to his chest, he felt the steady thud of a heartbeat that did not feel like his own. He blinked, confused. The room was small and warm, its walls lined with jars and dried flowers. The light of morning spilled through a half-open window. Then she appeared, soft steps, quiet voice, hands carrying a bowl of water and cloth. Her eyes met his, cautious yet unafraid. "You're awake," she said softly. "You've been unconscious for 2 days." Kale's lips parted, but no sound came. His throat was dry, words foreign on his tongue. He looked down at his arms, at the faint shimmer of scars healed too quickly. The wounds he remembered were gone, replaced by faint silver lines. Aria dipped the cloth into the bowl, wrung it out, and pressed it gently against his forehead. "You were hurt badly," she continued, her tone steady, though her heart raced beneath her calm. "You're safe here." He tried to speak, his voice rough and uncertain. "Where?" "In my home," she said. "Near Eldergrove's edge. You were lying in the woods when I found you." The name struck something deep within him, like an echo trying to return. Eldergrove, a forest, a battlefield, the flash of blood beneath moonlight. He shut his eyes, the images stabbing through his skull like broken glass. Pain flared, then nothing. Only emptiness, where memory should be. She noticed the way his jaw clenched, how his fingers gripped the blanket. "Don't strain yourself," she murmured. "You've lost a lot of blood." He opened his eyes again, studying her. "Who are you?" "Aria," she said simply. "A healer," he repeated it under his breath, as though testing the sound. Ymria. It felt strange on his tongue, gentle, unlike the sharp names of war he couldn't quite recall. "And you," she asked after a pause, "do you remember your name?" Silence. He looked away, toward the small fire flickering in the hearth. The question pressed against the hollow in his mind, but no answer came. A faint growl of frustration escaped him before he realized it wasn't entirely human. His voice broke somewhere between man and beast. Aria set the bowl aside, startled but calm. "It's all right," she said softly. "You don't have to remember everything yet." He turned to her, eyes narrowing. "Yet, memories come back when they're ready," she said, her tone steady but uncertain. "And maybe you're meant to remember them slowly." He stared at her a long moment, the flicker of firelight catching gold in his irises. She didn't flinch beneath his gaze, and for a reason he couldn't name. That steadied him. For days, Kale remained in the healer's cottage, silent and restless. Aria tended to him with quiet patience, though she often caught him watching her as if searching for something lost. He spoke little, ate little, slept less. Sometimes she would find him at the window before dawn, staring into the forest as though something out there called to him. She tried to distract him with simple tasks, helping sort herbs, feeding the small animals she cared for. But he moved with a strange grace, predatory even in stillness. There was something untamed beneath his calm, a strength she didn't understand. One evening, as she changed the bandages on his shoulder, she noticed the faint mark near his collarbone, an intricate sigil shaped like a crescent claw. Her breath caught. She had seen that symbol once, carved into the stone ruins deep within Eldergrove, the mark of the Alpha. She drew back slightly. Brigands, He looked down, tracing it with his fingers. It was there when I woke. You didn't have it before? His expression darkened. I don't remember before. The fire crackled, filling the silence between them. So what's between them? Arya swallowed, unsure whether to speak the thought forming in her mind. There are stories, she said quietly, of wolves who walk as men. Protectors, they called them. But some became cursed. His eyes lifted sharply. Accursed? She nodded, her voice almost a whisper. They say their hearts stop when they lose their true mate. Only her voice can awaken them again. For a heartbeat, the air stilled. Kale's gaze locked with hers, the shadows deepening around them. His heartbeat quickened, then faltered. He didn't know why the words unsettled him so deeply, only that something inside him stirred, a flicker of memory, a whisper of her name lost beneath rain. He rose abruptly, ignoring the pain in his side. Those are just tales. And maybe, she said, eyes following him. But sometimes tales are born from truth. He turned toward the door, the forest beyond, calling like a pulse he couldn't ignore. Yet when he reached the threshold, his strength failed him. The world spun. Arya caught him before he fell, her hands steady against his chest. In that instant, something impossible happened. Beneath her palms, his heart gave one solid beat, then another. Slow, uneven, but real. Kale froze, his breath catching. Their eyes met, hers wide with shock, his filled with something like recognition. He stepped back, trembling. What did you do? Nothing, she whispered. But she didn't finish. Neither of them spoke again. The silence between them felt alive, heavy with something neither could name. That night, as he lay awake on the cot by the fire, Kale stared into the ceiling's flickering shadows. He didn't know who he was, or what bound him to this girl who had pulled him from death. But when she breathed in her sleep, the rhythm of it synced with the faint thud in his chest, as if his heart had borrowed its strength from hers. Outside, the forest watched in silence. The moon rose over Eldergrove, silver and cold, and somewhere in the depths of memory, the Alpha's forgotten name waited to be found. Nights in Eldergrove carried a quiet unlike anywhere else. It wasn't peace. It was the stillness that came before something remembered itself. Arya sat by the fire, watching the man who had once been the wounded wolf. His breathing had grown steadier, the sharpness in his gaze softening, though the wildness beneath his calm never faded. He moved like a creature used to silence, one who listened more than he spoke. Kale said little in the days that followed, yet his presence filled the small cabin. He fixed the roof without being asked, stacked the firewood, and watched the forest as though waiting for it to move. Sometimes she'd catch him at the window, the silver light brushing against his skin, and see a flicker in his eyes, a shadow of pain he couldn't name. She didn't ask. Healing required patience, and she had learned long ago that silence could mend what words could not. Still, curiosity tugged at her. Who was he before the forest took him? What kind of man carried such strength and sorrow at once? That night, the moon rose full and pale. Arya stood outside, hanging herbs to dry. The forest whispered, alive with soft rustles and unseen eyes. When she turned, Kale was there, barefoot, shirt unbuttoned, the faint light tracing scars across his chest. For a moment, she froze, unsure whether to speak. I couldn't sleep, he said quietly. His voice carried the weight of someone unused to explaining himself. She nodded, pretending not to notice how the moonlight made his skin gleam like silver. The forest is louder at night, she said. It doesn't want anyone to forget it's alive. He stepped closer, his eyes reflecting the glow. It's familiar, he murmured, as if I've walked these woods before. And maybe you have, she said softly. And maybe that's how you found your way here. Kale looked at her, studying her face as though trying to match it to a memory. You're not afraid of me. I should be, she asked, meeting his gaze. He hesitated. And whatever it was, it had not forgotten the Alpha who had fallen, or the girl who had brought his heart back to life. Morning came pale and quiet, as though the forest itself held its breath after the restless night. She touched his arm gently, grounding him. You're safe. No one will harm you here. His muscles eased, just slightly, at her touch. They approached the elder's cottage near the village square. Elder Myrith opened the door before they knocked, her silver hair braided with herbs, eyes sharp as if she saw more than most. She studied Kale with unsettling focus. You bring a storm with you, healer, she said softly. Arya swallowed. He needs help? The elder's gaze sharpened. He needs truth. Kale met her stare, unflinching. Tell me who I am. Myrith stepped aside, motioning them in. I will tell you what the forest already knows. Inside, incense burned and scrolls filled the shelves. Kale remained tense, wary. The elder traced a symbol in the air, crescent and claw. Kale froze, eyes widening just slightly. Alpha, she whispered, the rightful leader of Eldergrove's ancient pack. Aria's breath caught. Kale stood like a statue carved from moonlight and shadow. If that is true, why don't I remember? This voice softened. Because memory is a bond, and yours was shattered the night betrayal spilled blood under the moon. His fists clenched, something sharp and painful flashing across his face, half memory, half instinct. Aria reached for him without thinking, fingertips brushing his wrist. His breath trembled. The elder watched quietly. Your heart died, she said gently, until hers called it back. Silence followed, thick and fragile. Kale turned toward Aria slowly, meaning dawning like a sunrise he wasn't ready to see. She brought me back. Heat bloomed in Aria's chest, confusing and overwhelming. She opened her mouth to speak, but a sudden howl tore through the village air, deep, violent, far too close. Windows rattled. Children screamed. Kale's posture snapped from confusion to predator in an instant. His eyes burned gold. They're here. Outside, villagers scrambled as another howl echoed. Closer, hunting. Myra's voice was steady. The world outside roared again, claws scraping against earth, shadows racing between cottages. Kale stepped toward the door, strength returning like a tide. Aria followed, close at his heels. The village that moments ago tasted of bread and warmth now smelled of fear and wildness. Somewhere in the chaos, a wolf's gaze glinted, recognition and hunger mingling. Kale inhaled deeply, instincts rising like a storm beneath his skin. The heartbeat Aria had revived thudded strong, as if preparing for war. He looked at her once more, voice almost a vow. Whatever comes, you stay with me. She nodded, breath trembling. Always. And just as the first rogue wolf leapt from the shadows, teeth bared and eyes blazing, the world held its breath, caught between the past that hunted him and the bonds slowly pulling him back to life. The air cracked with sound, the raw snarl of teeth and fury. Kale moved before thought, instincts surging through him like lightning. The first rogue wolf lunged, a blur of muscle and shadow, but Kale's body remembered the rhythm of battle, even if his mind did not. His claws met flesh, and the world became motion and blood. Around them, villagers screamed and scattered into the dark. Aria stood frozen at the doorway, her breath caught between terror and awe. He wasn't human now. He was something far older, something the earth itself seemed to recognize. 3 wolves surrounded him, their eyes red with madness, their snarls echoing through the square. Kale's strength was fluid, merciless, his movements a dance between man and beast. But there was no glory in it, only the cold certainty of survival. He struck one down, spun, took another's weight on his shoulder. The third clamped its jaws around his arm. Drawing blood, he roared, not in pain but in awake. The sound shook the air, and the rogues hesitated. Aria's heart hammered. She wanted to run to him, but something deep inside whispered to wait. His eyes caught hers mid-battle. Gold blazing against the silver night. For one suspended breath, everything slowed. The world dimmed until there was only that look, a wordless pull stronger than fear. Then, as if drawn by that invisible thread, she stepped forward. The rogue wolf that had sunk its teeth into Kale lunged again. Aria didn't think, she moved. Her hand reached out, catching the creature's flank. The instant her palm met its fur, a shock of light burst from her skin. It wasn't flame or lightning, but something purer, a white gold radiance that rippled like breath through the air. The wolf yelped and fell back, eyes wide with sudden terror. Kale froze, chest heaving, his gaze locked on her. The light faded, but its echo lingered, humming faintly in the space between them. Aria stared at her trembling hand, unsure if she'd imagined it. What was that? Her voice was barely a whisper. Kale didn't answer. His pulse raced in his ears, his wounds already closing, drawn together by the same strange warmth that radiated from her touch. The other rogues had fled, their howls fading into the trees. The silence that followed was almost sacred. He approached her slowly, each step deliberate. You shouldn't have touched it, he said finally, though his tone held no anger, only confusion, awe, and something deeper. I didn't mean to, she murmured. It just happened. His eyes softened. It wasn't the wolf you touched. She looked up at him, breath unsteady. Then what? He hesitated, his voice low. Ah, you touched me. Even from where you stood, I felt it. The words hung heavy between them. Kale's chest rose and fell, the faint rhythm of his heartbeat steady and alive, stronger than it had been since the night she found him. The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of rain. The moon had risen higher, casting light through the drifting clouds. For a moment, the world seemed remade in silver. Myrith's voice broke the silence from behind them. The bond awakens. They both turned. The elder stood at the doorway, her expression unreadable. The curse that silenced his heart was never meant to be broken by will, only by fate. The moon has chosen its moment. Arya shook her head. I don't understand. The elder stepped closer, eyes gleaming in the moonlight. When the Alpha's heart ceased, the balance of the forest faltered. The moon bound his life to another, someone with light strong enough to call him back. That bond now lives in you. Arya felt the world tilt. That's not possible. Kale looked at her, a quiet storm in his gaze. You heard my heartbeat, he said. You called my name. Her throat tightened. It was a dream. It wasn't. He took a step closer, his voice rough, intimate. When I was dying, I heard your voice. It was the only sound that reached me. You woke something that should have stayed buried. Arya's eyes glistened. And now? He studied her face, every line, every breath. And now I can't tell where my heartbeat ends and yours begins. The confession stole the air from the room. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Kale reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and brushed his fingers against hers. The moment their skin touched, the same golden light shimmered faintly again. Soft this time, pulsing in rhythm with their heart. Arya gasped, feeling the warmth travel up her arm, through her chest, until it rested beneath her ribs, glowing like moonfire. Myrith watched silently, then whispered, The bond is sealed. Kale's eyes darkened. What does it mean? It means, the elder said quietly, your fates are no longer separate. Her voice carries your life, and your blood now carries hers. One heart divided between two bodies. Should one fall silent again? She didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. Arya's hand slipped from Kale's, the weight of it settling in her chest. The bond was no dream. It was real and dangerous. He stepped back, torn between instinct and fear. You shouldn't have done this, he said, though his voice betrayed no anger, only guilt. You've tied yourself to something cursed. She shook her head. I didn't choose it. He met her eyes. And neither did I. Outside, the moonlight deepened, spilling across the forest like a silent vow. Somewhere in the distance, a lone wolf howled, a sound of mourning and awakening both. Arya turned toward the sound, her pulse echoing it, steady and alive. Kale's gaze followed her, and for the first time he understood what it meant to be bound, not by chains, but by heartbeat. The forest, once silent, seemed to breathe again. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying whispers of what was coming. Myrith's voice faded into the stillness. The moon has woken, and with it, the Alpha's fate. Kale closed his eyes, the sound of Arya's heartbeat steady in his ears. It was no longer silence that filled him, but a rhythm that refused to fade. And somewhere deep within, the beast stirred, not in hunger, but in recognition. The night after the moon awoke, the forest refused to rest. The trees whispered like watchful sentinels, the wind carrying faint howls that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Kale hadn't slept. He sat by the dying fire, his back to the wall, every sense sharp and restless. Arya lay nearby, her breathing soft and steady, though even in sleep her brow furrowed, as if she too could feel the tension threading through the dark. The bond between them pulsed faintly, an invisible tether humming beneath his skin. He could feel her heartbeat through the silence, matching his own. It both comforted and terrified him. He rose before dawn, stepping outside into the mist. The scent of iron hung faintly in the air, old and familiar. He followed it to the edge of the woods, where the ground was marked with claw prints. At their center lay a torn scrap of black leather embossed with a crest he didn't recognize, but his body did. The moment his fingers brushed it, a rush of memories hit him like a storm. Wolves kneeling, blood dripping onto stone, an oath sworn beneath a crimson moon. I am the Alpha of Eldergrove. My pack, my blood, my bond. Then betrayal, his Beta's face twisted with rage and envy, the blade that pierced his chest, the curse that silenced his heart. He staggered back, breath catching, the world spinning. The memory burned through him like fire, raw and merciless. He remembered everything. Arya woke to the sound of the door slamming open. Kale stood in the doorway, eyes blazing gold. His voice was low, trembling with fury barely contained. I know who I am. She rose quickly, sensing danger in the way the air around him vibrated. Kale. No, he cut in. Alpha Kale of Eldergrove. The night I died, it was my own blood that betrayed me. My second in command, Rowan. He cursed my heart and took my pack. His hands shook as he spoke, rage and grief warring within him. He told them I was dead. and now he sends rogues to finish what he started. Arya approached carefully. Evil. Then you have to face him. His gaze snapped to her. If I do, you'll be in danger. The bond ties you to me. If he kills me again, then I die too, she finished softly. The words trembled between them, fragile between them, fragile but true. But if you don't fight him, he'll keep coming. You can't hide from what you are. Her courage both steadied and broke him. He took a step closer, his voice rough. You don't understand what he'll do to get to me. And maybe not, she said. But I understand what happens if you keep running. Cale stared at her, and for a long moment neither spoke. Then he looked away, jaw set. If I'm to face him, I'll need to take back the blood oath. Arya frowned. What is that? He turned toward the dying fire, eyes distant. It's the vow that binds an alpha to his pack. It connects us. Mind, blood, and instinct. When Rowan betrayed me, the oath was broken, and the bond turned to poison. The only way to reclaim it is to call the pack beneath the moon and renew it with blood. His voice darkened. But if I fail, the bond will consume me. There won't be anything left to save. The morning light crept across the floorboards, soft but cold. Arya stepped forward until she stood beside him. Then we don't fail, she said simply. Cale looked at her, something unspoken passing between them. The bond thrummed again. A pulse of strength shared between two hearts. He drew in a breath, steadied by it. The moon rises full again in 3 nights. That's what I'll call them. The following days passed in quiet preparation. Cale trained alone in the clearing, moving with renewed purpose. His strength had returned. Every strike, every movement controlled and deliberate. The shadows of memory no longer weighed him down. They sharpened him. Yet each time his heart pounded, he felt Arya's echo through it, steadying him like a compass pointing home. She spent her hours gathering herbs, blending tonics for his wounds, though neither spoke of the growing fear that lingered between them. On the 3rd night, the moon climbed high, silver and unyielding. The air grew heavy with the scent rain. Cale stood at the center of the clearing, bare-chested, scars gleaming beneath the light. Arya watched from the edge, her hands clasped tight. He drew a blade from his belt, an ancient weapon carved with runes that pulsed faintly blue. Once this begins, he said, it cannot be undone. I trust you, she whispered. He nodded once, then dragged the blade across his palm. Blood welled dark and thick. He let it fall onto the ground, tracing a circle in the dirt. By moon and blood, I call the bond that was broken, he intoned, voice low and ancient. I call my pack wherever they run. I call them home. The wind shifted. From the forest came movement, shadows emerging, shapes forming. Wolves, dozens of them, their eyes glowing gold, silver and red. They approached cautiously, circling the clearing, their growls low and uncertain. Among them, one stepped forward, larger, darker, his eyes burning with crimson hatred. Rowan? Arya's breath caught. The beta-turned alpha sneered. You should have stayed dead, Cale. Cale straightened, blood dripping from his hand. You stole what was mine. You poisoned the bond. Rowan's grin was cruel. You were weak. You loved too easily. And now you've bound yourself to a human. How noble. How pathetic. Cale's voice deepened, steady as the earth beneath him. You'll never understand the strength that comes from love, Rowan lunged. The pack erupted into chaos, wolves clashing beneath the full moon. Cale met him head-on, fury and memory colliding. Every strike was vengeance, every heartbeat a reclaiming of what he'd lost. Arya watched in horror and awe, the pulse of their shared bond echoing the rhythm of his blows. But as Cale gained ground, Rowan's claws tore across his chest, reopening old wounds. Cale stumbled, blood pooling beneath him. Without thinking, Arya ran forward. She dropped beside him, pressing her hands to his heart. Cale, breathe, she whispered, voice trembling. The light flared again, bright and fierce. Cale gasped, a sound torn from somewhere between life and death. The glow spread through the clearing, spilling over the battling wolves. One by one, they froze, the light wrapping around them like chains of moonfire. Rowan staggered back, eyes wide. What are you? Cale rose slowly, the wound already closing. Ending this. He drove his blade forward, striking true. Rowan fell, the light consuming him until only ash remained. Silence followed, pure and deep. The wolves bowed, one by one, heads lowered in recognition. Jen? Cale turned to Arya, his voice raw. The blood oath is mine again. Her hand trembled in his. And your heart? He looked at her, eyes softer now, glowing faintly gold. Still beats for you. The forest was silent after the battle, but it was not peace that followed. It was exhaustion. The earth still smelled of blood and ash. the ghosts of howls lingering in the wind. Kale stood in the center of the clearing, chest rising and falling, every muscle trembling with the effort of holding himself upright. Around him, the surviving wolves of Eldergrove knelt, their heads bowed not in fear, but recognition. The bond had returned, but it was fragile, pulsing faintly beneath the bruised light of the fading moon. Arya stood at his side, her hands still faintly glowing from the power she had unleashed. It frightened her, the memory of that light, the way it had burned through her skin like something alive. She didn't understand what she was becoming, only that every time Kale bled, her veins ached as though it were her own wound. The bond was no longer a myth. It was alive inside them both. Kale turned to the pack, his voice low but steady. And the curse is broken. The blood oath is renewed. Eldergrove stands again. A few wolves lifted their heads, cautious hope flickering in their eyes. But when Kale looked at them, all he saw was what he'd lost. The loyalty that had turned against him, the faces that had once followed his command, now shadowed by guilt. And beneath it all, a single thought pulsed in his mind. How long before this peace breaks again? That night, as the pack scattered to their dens, Kale and Arya returned to the cabin. The forest had changed, the air colder, heavier, as if something unseen still watched from the dark. Kale didn't speak much. His silence was sharp, filled with thoughts he refused to share. Arya felt it pressing between them, the distance growing even as their bond pulled them closer. She lit a single candle, the soft flame casting gold across his face. He sat by the window, the moonlight cutting a pale line across his eyes. "You should rest," she said quietly. "I can't. Because of what happened?" He didn't answer immediately. "When I struck Rowan down, I felt something slip away," he said finally. Something that wasn't his, as if the curse didn't die with him. Arya's chest tightened. "You think it's still there?" He turned to her, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "And no curse ever ends cleanly. Blood leaves echoes. And the moon, it feels wrong tonight. Hollow." Arya followed his gaze outside. The moon hung pale and cold, a ring of shadow darkening its edges. It seemed to pulse faintly, like a dying heart. "Maybe it's only the night after battle," she said softly, though her voice lacked conviction. "Even the sky feels heavy after loss." Kale's expression softened for a moment. "You always find gentleness, even when the world doesn't deserve it." "I find truth," she murmured. "But sometimes they're the same thing." He stood, crossing to her in 2 quiet steps. "You shouldn't have risked yourself for me. You couldn't let you die." He reached out, his hand brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was tentative, almost reverent. "If I fall again," he said, "the bond will take you with me." "You know that now." "I do," she whispered, "and I'd still do it again." The silence that followed was heavier than words. He looked at her a long time, searching her face for something he couldn't name. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, low. "You shouldn't love what's cursed, but you didn't stop making it so easy to," she said softly. And before he could look away, she smiled, small, sad, defiant. Kale turned toward the window again, heart aching in a way no blade could inflict. Outside, the moon's light dimmed further, swallowed by a creeping shadow that seemed to spread across the sky. He frowned. Something's wrong. Arya joined him, following his gaze. The moonlight flickered, as if the world itself had blinked. The forest darkened, not with night, but with absence. The bond between them pulsed sharply, pain lancing through both their chests. Arya gasped, clutching her ribs. "Oh, Kale, what's happening?" He gritted his teeth, his voice strained. "The bond. It's reacting to something." The ground shuddered faintly. From deep within the woods came a low hum, like 1,000 voices whispering in unison. The pack began to howl, not in unity, but in fear. Kale's body tensed. He could feel them. Every heartbeat, every surge of panic through the bloodline that now answered to him. The connection was overwhelming, heavy with dread. Arya reached for him, her hand finding his arm. "Tell me what you see." He shut his eyes, focusing. The images came in flashes, trees bending under unseen force, shadows moving between them, the faint glint of eyes reflecting crimson light. "It's not over," he whispered. "Something's calling them. The rogues, the lost ones, they're being drawn to the forest again. By what?" He opened his eyes, and for a moment fear flickered there. "The hollow moon," he said quietly. The curse wasn't tied to Rowan. It was tied to the moon itself. He was only its vessel. Arya's pulse raced. Then what happens when it's full again? Kale's gaze lifted to the window, where the faint light struggled against the darkness. It won't be light that rises next time. It'll be hunger. The kind that consumes both man and wolf. The bond between them pulsed again, a faint warning echoing in their blood. Arya could feel it, the shadow pressing against the edges of her mind, the faint whisper of something vast and ancient stirring beneath the forest. The bond that had once saved him now trembled, as if afraid. Kale turned away from the window, voice low. "We've only broken one chain, Arya. The real curse is still waiting." She met his gaze, fear and faith colliding in her eyes. "Then we'll face it together." He almost smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You say that? As if the moon will give us a choice." Outside, the last of its light flickered and dimmed, leaving only the hollow glow of clouds drifting where it should have shone. The forest exhaled, cold and breathless. And somewhere beyond the trees, something ancient opened its eyes for the first time in centuries, watching, waiting, and whispering their names into the dark. The hollow moon hung above Eldergrove like a wound that refused to heal. Its dim light spilled weakly across the forest, casting long broken shadows through the trees. Days had passed since Kale had reclaimed his pack, but peace never came. The wolves were restless, haunted by dreams they couldn't remember and whispers they couldn't name. Even the wind carried a new weight, low and mournful, as if the forest itself grieved something unseen. Arya felt it too, the wrongness pulsing beneath the air. Each night she woke from dreams filled with the sound of distant heartbeats, overlapping and out of rhythm. Sometimes she would hear faint voices carried by the wind, soft, desperate cries that faded when she tried to listen closer. The bond between her and Kale grew stronger with each passing day, but it came at a cost. Every surge of his pain echoed in her chest. Every flicker of her fear trembled inside him. They were one soul bound in two fragile bodies, and now both felt the forest breaking. Kale had been distant since the night of the hollow moon. He wandered the edges of the forest at dusk, tracing the scent of old blood and fading magic. The pack obeyed him again, but even they kept their distance. They sensed it, the change in their alpha, the way his heartbeat now carried two rhythms instead of one. Arya watched him from the cabin window, his silhouette outlined by the dying light. He stood still for long stretches of time, as though listening for something only he could hear. When he finally returned, his face was pale, jaw tight. "The ground is bleeding," he said quietly, dropping to a seat by the fire. "The old runes beneath the grove are awake again. Rowan's death didn't end the curse. It fed it." Arya frowned. "What do you mean awake?" He looked up, eyes gold and hollow. The magic that bound the pack to the moon, it wasn't just a symbol. It was alive. Rowan tried to control it, and when I killed him, that power needed somewhere to go. Her heart skipped. Where did it go? Kale hesitated. Into me, and through me, into you. The fire cracked sharply, sparks leaping into the air. Arya's breath caught as the truth settled like frost across her skin. The strange light, the shared pain, the dreams, it all made sense now. "And then this isn't just a bond," she whispered. "It's a transfer." Kale nodded slowly. "The curse is trying to root itself through us both. It's why the wolves still hear whispers at night. The forest is calling for balance it can't find." Arya turned to the small table where her herbs and vials were laid out. There must be a way to calm it, something that restores the flow without feeding it. He gave a weary, almost bitter smile. "You think this can be healed like a wound?" She met his gaze, steady. "Everything can be healed if you remember what it used to be." Kale watched her gather a few jars, lavender, ashroot, moonvine, each chosen with the precision of instinct more than knowledge. He didn't stop her. The sound of her movements, gentle and deliberate, steadied him in a way nothing else could. When she began to hum under her breath, a melody low and mournful, he realized it wasn't just a habit. The air shifted around her, soft waves of light rippling faintly from her fingertips as she mixed the herbs. "What are you doing?" He asked quietly. Arya's voice trembled like wind through glass. "It's an old healer's song. My mother used to sing it when the forest fell sick." The words flowed, old and wordless, their rhythm syncing with her heartbeat. The room brightened subtly, the fire responding as if drawn by the sound. Kale felt the tension in his chest ease, his pulse aligning with hers, the heaviness lifting for the first time in days. The faint hum grew stronger, filling every corner of the cabin with warmth and light. But as the last note faded, the forest outside responded. A low, mournful echo rose from the trees, a chorus of howls that sounded both reverent and afraid. The pack answered her song as if it called to something ancient in their blood. Kale stood abruptly, his expression caught between awe and terror. "In there hearing it?" he whispered. Arya looked out the window. The wolves had gathered in the clearing, heads tilted toward the sky, their eyes glowing faintly white instead of gold. The air trembled with the weight of unseen power. I didn't mean to. Kale moved closer, his hand gripping hers. Don't stop. Whatever this is, it's reaching them, it's calming them. But the calm didn't last. The howls shifted, twisting into cries that shook the air. The wind roared through the forest, rattling the walls. Arya gasped as the light in her hands flickered from gold to deep crimson. The song faltered. It's turning. He caught her as she stumbled, his grip firm. Breathe. Focus on me. I can't. It's pulling too hard, she choked. It's not healing. It's remembering. The ground shuddered. From deep beneath the forest floor came a sound like cracking stone, old magic breaking free. Kale pulled her against him, shielding her from the dust that rained from the ceiling. The glow faded, leaving only silence and the faint tremor of their hearts beating in sync. Tika settled. Kale looked toward the window. The wolves were gone, not scattered, vanished, as if swallowed by the forest itself. The clearing was empty, the air eerily still. Arya's voice was hoarse. Where did they go? He didn't answer right away. He stepped outside, scanning the woods. The trees stood unmoving, their shadows long and sharp. The song reached them. He said at last. It showed them something that called them deeper. Arya followed, her steps unsteady. Can we bring them back? Kale turned, eyes dark as the hollow moon above. No, he said quietly. Not yet. They're chasing the echo of the song, the one that lives in you. Her heart tightened. Then what happens when they find it? Kale's jaw set, his voice soft but certain. The moon will wake again. And this time it won't ask to be healed. It will demand a sacrifice. The forest exhaled long and low, as if it had been listening all along. Above them, the hollow moon pulsed faintly once more, like a heart learning how to beat again. The nights that followed the healer's song were colder. The forest felt emptied of sound, as if every living thing had stepped back to watch what would happen next. Kale had sent scouts from what remained of his pack to search for those who vanished, but none returned. Their connection through the blood oath had weakened, their heartbeats distant and faint, as though the forest had swallowed them whole. He tried to hide the truth from Arya, but she felt it through their bond, the weight of each failure, each loss. The silence between them deepened like frost, spreading over glass. One evening, Kale returned later than usual, his shoulders heavy, his expression unreadable. Arya sat by the fire, trying to keep her hands busy grinding herbs, though she hadn't slept in 2 nights. When she looked up, she already knew. You didn't find them. His voice was low, roughened by exhaustion. No, but I found their scent leading north past the river. They're following something that isn't me. She set the pestle down. The song? He hesitated, then nodded. Or what's left of it. They're being drawn toward it, like a call they can't resist. Arya rose, moving closer. Then I'll call them back. No, for her was tone cut sharper than he meant it to. You saw what happened last time. The song doesn't obey you, it consumes you. Her eyes lifted to meet his. Maybe it's not meant to be controlled. Maybe it's meant to be understood. Kale turned away, running a hand through his hair. You sound like Myrith. She believed in balance. You believe only in strength, Arya said quietly. He spun to face her, frustration flickering across his features. Strength is the only reason we're still alive. No, she whispered. The only reason you're alive is because something stronger than strength chose you. The words struck harder than she intended. His jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled between them, its glow painting their faces in shades of amber and shadow. Finally, Kale stepped forward, his voice quieter. If we can't find the others by dawn, we'll go after them together. But not before. I won't lose you to the same darkness that took them. Arya nodded, though her chest ached with something she couldn't name. She wanted to believe in his promise, but the moon had grown strange again. Too bright, too still. That night, when Kale finally fell asleep, she couldn't. The whisper of the song stirred faintly inside her, like a heartbeat buried beneath her ribs. It called softly, insistently, drawing her toward the window. Outside, the forest shimmered under the pale light. The hollow glow no longer looked empty. It pulsed faintly, as if aware of her gaze. She stepped closer, hand resting against the glass. The call grew louder, not in words but in feeling. It was sorrow, endless and deep. It was her name whispered by 1,000 voices. Without waking Kale, she slipped outside. The air was cold, but the pull was stronger than fear. The song moved through her like breath, guiding her deeper into the woods. Her feet found the path on their own, though she couldn't remember taking it before. The trees leaned close, their branches bending as if listening. After what felt like hours, she reached the old stone circle at the heart of Eldergrove. The ruins glowed faintly under the moonlight, runes along their edges burning soft silver. And there, standing in the center, was a man. At first she thought her eyes deceived her. His figure was familiar, broad shoulders, sharp jaw, dark hair glinting under the moon. But when he turned, the eyes that met hers were not Cale's. They burned crimson. "Rowan," she breathed. He smiled, and the sight of it made her heart stumble. "You remember? But you're dead." He stepped forward, his voice smooth as glass. "A death is not the end when the moon still needs its vessel." She took a step back, pulse racing. "A Cale destroyed you." Rowan's laugh was soft, almost pitying. "He destroyed what was mortal, but when the blood oath broke, part of me remained." "The moon remembers every oath, every betrayal, and you, healer, you're its new voice. I don't belong to you." He tilted his head. "No, you belong to him, and through him, and the ruins beneath their feet pulsed brighter, the air thickening with power." Aria's bond with Cale flared painfully, her heartbeat staggering as if tugged in two directions. "Stop," she gasped. "You're hurting him." Rowan smiled faintly. "I'm not hurting him. You are. You tied your soul to a beast cursed by blood. You thought love could break the moon's will." His hand lifted. An invisible force pulled her closer. "You're the key that holds him bound, and the blade that can set him free." The world spun. Aria fought against the pull, her breath shallow. "You want to kill him again?" "Kill him?" Rowan murmured. "No, I want to wake him. The alpha that sleeps beneath your bond. The one who isn't Cale, but what he was before you tamed him." Her vision blurred as pain rippled through her chest. Cale's heartbeat thundered inside her mind, frantic and distant. Somewhere he was running, calling her name through the darkness. She tried to speak, but the sound came out as a broken whisper. "He'll come for me." Rowan's smile deepened. "I'm counting on it." A light flared behind her, the unmistakable gold of Cale's aura cutting through the night. He burst into the clearing, fury and fear colliding in his eyes. "Get away from her!" The air trembled. Rowan spread his hands, mock bowing. "You came faster than I thought." Cale's claws glinted under the moonlight. "You should have stayed dead." Rowan's gaze flicked to Aria. So should you." Before Cale could move, Rowan drove his hand into the ground. The runes erupted with light, forming a ring of fire around them. Aria screamed as the bond flared, pain searing through her chest. Cale lunged, grabbing her before she could collapse. The fire burned brighter, curling around them like chains. Rowan's voice rose over the roar. "The moon demands balance. Cale, a life for a life. If you wish to save her, give her back what you took, your heart." Cale's breath came ragged, his arms tight around Aria's trembling form. "I won't let you take her." Rowan's smirk vanished, replaced by something darker. "Even the moon will." The flames surged, and the last thing Aria saw before the world went white was Cale's face. His eyes filled not with rage, but with a sorrow so deep it felt eternal. The fire swallowed everything. Aria's scream vanished in the roar as light burst from the circle, blinding and endless. Cale held her tightly, the heat searing his skin, but he didn't let go. The power clawed at him, dragging at the bond that tethered them. He could feel Rowan's magic twisting through the air, ancient and cruel. The hollow moon above pulsed brighter, its glow feeding the flames. Aria's body trembled in his arms, her heartbeat erratic, faltering. "A Cale!" she gasped, voice barely a whisper. "It hurts." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. He could feel her pain as if it were his own. Their bond pulsing with raw, electric agony. Every breath she took echoed in his chest, every tremor mirrored beneath his ribs. He tightened his hold, grounding her against him. "You stay with me. Do you hear me? Stay." Rowan's voice cut through the flames, calm and mocking. "You can't fight it, Cale. The bond was never meant to exist." "One heart cannot live for two. The moon wants balance, and balance demands loss." Cale looked up, his eyes blazing gold through the smoke. "You lost your right to speak of balance when you sold your soul to darkness." Rowan smiled faintly. "And you? You gave yours to a human who was never meant to carry it." The words hit like a blow. Cale's breath caught as Aria's heartbeat weakened beneath his hand. The sound was fading. Slow, uneven. He felt the hollow forming in his chest again, the same empty void that had once silenced him beneath the blood moon. Not again. He wouldn't survive it again. He knelt, cradling her face in his hands. "Look at me," he said, voice shaking. "You're stronger than this. You brought me back once. You can do it again." Her eyelids fluttered, tears cutting through the ash on her cheeks. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It's not taking me, it's taking you." The bond's turning back on itself. Kale froze, the truth in her eyes shattered him. The bond, once meant to unite them, had become a conduit for the curse. The moon wasn't demanding one life. It was draining both. He could feel it now, the slow collapse of his own heartbeat syncing with hers. Rowan's laughter echoed around them. How poetic. The Alpha's curse ends not by blade, but by love. Kale rose to his feet, fury burning through the weakness. You won't touch her again. Rowan stepped closer, the firelight reflecting off his crimson eyes. She's already dying, Kale. All I've done is give her the same gift you carry. Silence. Kale lunged, his claws meeting Rowan's throat in a blur of motion. But instead of flesh, his hand passed through air, the illusion flickering before vanishing entirely. Rowan's voice came from everywhere at once, carried by the wind. You can't kill what the moon keeps. Kale staggered, his strength fading. Behind him, Arya gasped, her body arching as a surge of energy ripped through the bond. He turned back to her, falling to his knees beside her. Her skin glowed faintly, veins illuminated by soft, eerie light. A Kale, she whispered, reaching for him. Her fingers brushed his cheek, trembling. If you stay here, it'll take you too. He grabbed her hand, pressing it to his chest. Then let it. I won't leave you. Her eyes filled with tears. Please, don't make my death your curse again. The word death broke something in him. He shook his head fiercely, holding her tighter. And no, you're not dying. Not like this. His breath came in ragged bursts. You told me once that everything can be healed if you remember what it used to be. Her lips trembled in a faint smile. Then remember us. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. The bond between them flared, flooding his senses with warmth, light, and unbearable sorrow. Every memory rushed through him, the first time she said his name, the moment her touch brought his heart to life, the sound of her laughter between the storms. He clung to each one, desperate, refusing to let the darkness take her. But the moon had already chosen. The light around them brightened, blinding white bleeding into silver. Kale felt the pulse of her heartbeat falter. Once, twice, then stop. The silence that followed was absolute. He froze. The bond snapped through him like shattering glass. For a heartbeat, everything inside him went still. No movement, no breath. The world shrank to the weight of her body in his arms and the stillness of her chest. He pressed his ear to her heart, listening for what he refused to accept. Nothing. The faint glow around her skin faded, leaving only the soft light of the moon falling across her lifeless face. And no, his voice was raw, broken. Arya, please, don't do this. He shook her gently, his hands trembling. You promised me. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the flames still, dimming to embers. Kale bowed his head, his tears dark against her pale skin. If you take her, he whispered to the sky, then take me too. The hollow moon pulsed once as if answering. Pain tore through him, sharp and final. His body seized, his heartbeat collapsing inward. The world went cold. He fell beside her, his fingers still intertwined with hers. The last thing he heard before everything faded was the faint echo of her voice in his mind, a whisper carried by the bond they built from love and defiance. I'll find you, even beyond this. And then there was nothing. Just silence. 2 heartbeats, stilled beneath the same hollow moon. Dawn rose without warmth. The forest, once alive with breath and heartbeat, stood hushed beneath a gray, unmoving sky. The battle's fire had long burned out, leaving only smoke curling lazily into the morning air. Kale lay where the light found him, his body still, his hand locked around Arya's. No wind stirred, no bird sang, even the earth seemed to mourn. For hours, nothing changed. Then faintly, the forest began to move again, branches whispering, roots shifting beneath the soil. The moon's mark still glowed faintly on Kale's skin, pulsing once before fading entirely. Around him, the remaining wolves of the pack gathered, their movements slow and uncertain. They sniffed the air, heads bowed low. The Alpha's heart had fallen silent again, and with it, their bond had dimmed to a fragile echo. Among them came Myreth, the elder, her cane sinking into the ash-soft ground. She looked upon the 2 still bodies inside, grief written deep in the lines of her face. The moon has taken its price, she whispered, but it is never satisfied with endings. It always hungers for what comes after. She knelt beside them, her trembling hand resting lightly over Arya's chest. There's still warmth, she murmured, but no rhythm. Her eyes lifted to Kale, whose expression remained peaceful, his body unnaturally calm. And yet he does not decay. The bond between them holds him tethered, even now. The pack's whimpers rose, a low mourning sound that carried through the trees. Myreth closed her eyes, listening, not to the wolves, but to something deeper. Through the stillness, faint as a sigh, she heard it. A distant heartbeat. Not steady, not strong, but there, like a promise struggling to remember itself. It wasn't Kale's. It wasn't Aria's. It was both. She stood slowly, leaning on her staff. "Guard them," she told the wolves. "No one disturbs this place until the moon speaks again." Days passed. Rain came and went, soft and sorrowful, washing the blood from the clearing. Moss grew where the circle of fire had burned. The wolves kept vigil, silent and loyal. At night they howled, not in rage, but in mourning that blurred into prayer. The forest began to breathe again, cautiously, as if afraid to wake what slept beneath its roots. Kale drifted in darkness. There was no time here, no air, no pain, only silence and memory. He saw flashes of her, Aria's laughter, her hand on his chest, the light that had saved him more than once. He tried to speak her name, but no sound came. The void swallowed everything, even his thoughts. He didn't know if he was dreaming or dying, or if such things mattered anymore. Then, through the emptiness, he felt it, the faintest touch, a whisper against the edge of his awareness. "Kale," her voice. Soft, uncertain, but real. It came like a ripple through the dark, stirring something deep within him. He reached for it, grasping at nothing, yet feeling her presence near. "You promised," she whispered. "You said you'd never leave me in the silence." He tried to answer, but all that came was a thought, raw and desperate. "Then wake me, Aria. Call my name again." Far above, the rain had stopped. Night fell once more, and the hollow moon returned, pale and watchful. Its light spilled through the clouds, finding the clearing where two bodies lay entwined. The glow touched Aria's face, and for the first time since her death, she stirred. Her fingers twitched, her lips parted in a breath that wasn't a breath, more memory than motion. A single tear escaped the corner of her eye and fell upon Kale's hand. The contact sent a faint shimmer through the air, a spark soft but undeniable. Myreth, watching from the edge of the forest, gasped softly. "The moon remembers love?" she whispered. "Even death cannot unbind it." Within the quiet realm between life and what lies beyond, Aria walked through mist. She didn't remember how she'd come here. Only that it was cold and endless. Shadows whispered her name, trying to pull her deeper, but she kept moving toward the faint golden glow flickering far ahead. It was weak, trembling, but familiar. She knew that light. She had seen it in his eyes. When she reached it, she found Kale, kneeling, lost, his hands pressed against the ground as if searching for something beneath it. His chest no longer rose with breath. His heart was still, yet his spirit lingered, chained by her own. "A Kale," she said softly. He looked up, disoriented, eyes wide with disbelief. "Aria?" She moved closer, her steps light across the mist. "You said you wouldn't leave me," she murmured. "But you did." He stood slowly, his hand trembling as he reached for her. "I tried to follow you." A faint, sorrowful smile touched her lips. "Then follow me again, back to where we began." He shook his head. "We can't." He shook his head. "We can't." "The curse was never the moon's," she interrupted gently. "It was ours. Our fear, our doubt, our refusal to let go. We gave it power." He stared at her, her words sinking deep. Around them, the darkness began to fade, replaced by faint silver light that pulsed like a living thing. The sound returned, the soft rhythm of two hearts remembering how to beat. Aria stepped forward and pressed her palm to his chest. "Listen," she whispered. At first there was only silence. Then, faintly, a single beat. Then another. The glow spread through them both, gold mixing with silver, their forms blurring into light. Outside, the wolves lifted their heads in unison, ears twitching. A faint sound echoed through the clearing. A heartbeat, deep and slow, echoing from beneath the soil. Myreth dropped to her knees, tears in her eyes. "The storm has ended," she whispered. "And the silence has spoken. Hastidako." The earth beneath the two bodies shuddered, the air grew warm. Then, with a slow, trembling inhale, Kale's chest rose once more. His hand clenched weakly around Aria's, whose own breath followed his. Two heartbeats, fragile but alive, broke through the quiet dawn. When Kale opened his eyes, the forest was bathed in morning light. Aria lay beside him, her face turned toward his, peaceful and real. For a long time, neither moved. They didn't speak. They simply listened to the sound of what they had both lost, and somehow, against all odds, found again. The first breath Kale drew after the silence was like inhaling the dawn itself. Fragile, trembling, alive. His lungs burned as though he had been underwater for centuries. Yet it was not pain that filled him. It was warmth. The faint rhythm in his chest quickened, syncing with another. Aria's. He turned his head, barely daring to move, and saw her beside him, her face pale but glowing in the soft morning light. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then finding him. For a long time, neither spoke. Words felt too small for what had happened. Their fingers were still intertwined, the bond between them pulsing with faint light, delicate but unbroken. Kale swallowed hard, voice hoarse. "You came back." Aria's lips curved into a faint smile. "You heard me." "I heard your voice in the dark," he whispered. "It pulled me back. I followed it." Her gaze softened. "Then it wasn't the moon that saved us. It was you." He shook his head slowly. "No, Aria. It was you. You called me home." The forest around them seemed to exhale at those words. The wind stirred through the leaves, carrying with it the scent of wet earth and new beginnings. The wolves that had kept vigil nearby lifted their heads, their eyes brightening as if they too felt the shift, the return of something sacred. Kale sat up, the weight of the world slowly returning to his shoulders. The clearing was no longer the battlefield of before. It was reborn, light filtering through the canopy like blessings. Yet beneath the calm, a strange stillness lingered. The moon's presence, though faint, was not gone. It watched, waiting. Aria struggled to rise, but Kale caught her before she could fall. Her body was weak, her pulse fragile. "Easy," he murmured. "You shouldn't move yet." "I'm fine," she said, though her voice trembled. "Just tired." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You gave everything to bring me back." "Don't say you're fine." She leaned into his touch, eyes closing briefly. "It wasn't just me. Something in the silence called too. I think it was the forest, or the moon, or maybe both." Kale glanced toward the trees. The air shimmered faintly with unseen energy, the faint hum of ancient power returning to stillness. "It's not over," he said quietly. "Rowan's magic is gone, but the curse, whatever bound it to the moon, it's still awake. I can feel it in the roots." Aria's eyes opened, her voice soft. "Then it means something still needs healing." He looked at her, his chest tightening. "I've already lost you once, Aria. I can't risk you again." She smiled faintly, her hand finding his. "You won't lose me. Not if we walk into it together this time." He wanted to argue, to tell her she had already done enough, but the bond pulsed gently between them, a reminder that their fates were no longer separate. If the curse still lived, it lived in both. They spent the next hours in quiet recovery. Kale's strength returned faster than hers, though every time he moved too far from her, his pulse faltered. The bond had changed. It was deeper, heavier, its rhythm not just shared but woven. When Aria slept, he sat beside her, tracing patterns in the dirt with his fingertips, runes he didn't consciously remember but felt compelled to draw. The old language of the wolves. Words of promise, protection, and mourning. By the time the sun began to sink, Aria stirred again. Her color had returned, faint but real. "What are you writing?" she asked quietly. He smiled a little. "A promise. To the ones we lost. And to you." She tilted her head. "What kind of promise?" He looked at her, golden eyes softening. "That I'll listen this time. That I'll listen this time. That I'll trust what the moon gives instead of fighting it." Aria reached out, her fingers brushing the marks he'd drawn. "Then let's finish it together." She knelt beside him, her hand resting over his. Together they traced the final rune, a symbol of unity, two halves bound by one heart. The ground beneath them glowed faintly, the lines of their creation pulsing like veins of light spreading outward through the soil. The air warmed, filled with the faint sound of distant whispers, not of sorrow this time, but of peace. And then as the last ray of sunlight vanished beyond the horizon, a voice spoke. Not from the sky, but from within them both. It was soft, vast, and unmistakably familiar. The curse was born from fear of loss, fear of love. You broke it not with blood, but with faith, Aria's breath caught. The moon. Kale's gaze lifted upward, where the hollow moon now shone whole and silver again, no longer fractured or dim. "It's speaking," he whispered. The voice continued, a melody woven through their very heartbeat. "The bond you carry is no chain. It is remembrance. A reminder that love, once born, does not die. It transforms." A soft light descended over the clearing, wrapping around them both. It wasn't cold like before. It was warm, living. Aria closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It's forgiving us," she whispered. Kale's arm circled her waist, drawing her closer. "No," he said softly. "It's freeing us." When the light faded, the runes beneath them turned to dust, their purpose fulfilled. The forest sighed again, the weight of centuries lifting. Kale looked at his hands, once marked by the Alpha's curse. The scars were gone. The symbol that had once burned into his chest was no more. He could feel the beat of his heart, strong, steady, his own. Aria reached up, her palm resting over it. Your hole? He covered her hand with his, smiling through the ache in his throat. Because you called me home. The wolves that remained emerged from the trees, their eyes glowing faintly, not with hunger or pain, but peace. They lowered their heads to the pair, a silent bow to the alpha who had returned not as a conqueror, but as one reborn. As the moonlight bathed them, Kale turned to Arya. What now? She smiled, her voice steady and calm. And now we live. He drew her closer, their foreheads touching, and the forest around them seemed to hum with quiet approval. For the first time in generations, Eldergrove was still, alive not in fear or blood, but in balance. Beneath the full moon, 2 heartbeats echoed where once there had been silence, calling each other home again and again. Night returned to Eldergrove softer than before, the forest breathing in calm, rhythmic waves. The curse had broken, but its echo lingered in the stillness, a reminder of how close darkness had come to swallowing everything. Kale stood on the edge of the clearing where it had all begun, the silver light of the moon washing over him. The wounds on his body had long faded, but the memory of them remained etched beneath his skin like scars that would never fully disappear. Behind him, he could hear the quiet shuffle of feet, Arya's light steps moving closer through the grass. You're awake again, she said gently, her voice carrying warmth even through the cool air. I don't think I've truly slept since the night I died, he murmured, glancing at her over his shoulder. She smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time you learn how. You learn how. He turned toward her, the ghost of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. And you? Will you teach me? I might, she said, her tone teasing but soft. If you promise not to vanish into the woods every time the moon rises. He looked up at the silver sky where the moon hung full and whole again, no longer hollow. Its glow painted her face in pale gold, illuminating the calm strength in her eyes. I keep expecting it to fade, he admitted quietly. As if the light is only borrowed. It isn't borrowed, Arya said. Wits remembered. Everything that's been lost finds its way back eventually. Her words lingered in the air, gentle yet powerful. Kale looked away, his expression thoughtful. When I was trapped in the silence, I thought I'd never see the moon again. I didn't even remember what warmth felt like. Then your voice reached me, and suddenly I remembered everything. That every promise, every heartbeat. You were the first light after all that darkness. Arya stepped closer, her hand finding his. Then you were the echo that answered mine. Their hands intertwined easily, the bond between them no longer glowing or burning. It simply was, quiet, alive, unbroken. Around them, the forest thrummed with subtle life. The wolves had returned to their dens, their howls no longer cries of mourning, but songs of renewal. The trees swayed lightly, their branches whispering secrets to the wind. Kale exhaled slowly, the tension that had lived inside him for so long finally easing. I never believed peace could feel like this, he said. For so long, all I knew was fight or flee. Arya's fingers traced slow circles against his palm. A peace doesn't come without remembering the pain that built it. He glanced at her, eyes glowing softly. You speak as though you've lived 1,000 years. Maybe I have, she said with a small laugh. But the healer's song runs through every generation of my family. Maybe the echoes never stopped, just waited for the right voice to wake them. Ain't the right voice, he repeated quietly. The one that called me back. Her laughter faded into a tender silence. The night deepened, the sky scattering with stars. The moonlight seemed to bend toward them, as if listening. Arya looked up, her gaze tracing its soft edges. Do you think it ever tires of watching us? Kale followed her gaze. The moon? Yes. All this time it's seen every heartbreak, every promise broken and made again. And still it rises. He thought for a moment before answering. And maybe it rises because it remembers what love once was. Because it hopes to see it reborn each time. The wind stirred, brushing her hair across her face. Kale reached out, tucking it gently behind her ear. His hand lingered there, thumb brushing her jaw. If the moon remembers love, he whispered, then maybe it remembers us too. She looked up at him, her breath catching. Us? He nodded, his eyes warm. The alpha who forgot how to feel and the healer who taught him how again. Her lips curved, her voice soft. And what will the moon say of them? That they survived, he said simply. That they found each other when everything else was lost. For a moment, neither spoke. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then Kale leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. The space between them dissolved into quiet understanding. They didn't need vows or promises. Their connection had already transcended both life and death. When he finally pulled back, the faintest shimmer of light flickered in the distance. A small silver figure moved between the trees. A lone wolf, its fur glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. It watched them for a moment, eyes knowing, before turning and vanishing into the woods. Arya followed its retreating form with her gaze. "Warpack watches still," she murmured. Gale nodded. "They've waited long enough for peace. Now they can rest." She turned back to him, studying his face in the quiet glow. "And you?" He smiled, soft and tired, yet full of something new. "For the first time, I think I will too." They walked back toward the cabin together, hand in hand, the night stretching gently before them. The path glimmered faintly under the moon's watchful eye, the shadows no longer threatening but tender. The forest no longer whispered of curses or loss, it hummed with renewal. When they reached the edge of the clearing, Arya stopped, glancing back one last time. The moon hung low now, dipping toward the horizon. "It feels different," she said quietly, as if it's saying goodbye. Cale looked at her, his voice low. "No, it's saying thank you." The last of the moonlight touched them both, a soft blessing before dawn. And as they stepped inside the cottage, their haven, their beginning, the night finally surrendered to morning. In the distance, the wolves howled one last time, a song not of mourning but memory. The moon, pale and content, sank into the horizon as though closing its eyes. Because the moon remembers love, and on that night, it remembered theirs. Morning broke gently across Eldergrove, light spreading through the mist like spilled gold. The air held the faint scent of rain and pine, the forest alive once more in quiet balance. Cale stood outside the cabin, his gaze lost in the soft horizon where dawn met the trees. Every sound, every breath felt new, as if the world itself had begun again. Behind him, the faint rustle of movement signaled Arya's waking. Her steps were light, hesitant, the floorboards creaking softly beneath her feet. "You didn't sleep," she said, her voice still heavy with mourning. He smiled faintly without turning. "I didn't want to miss it. The sunrise? The stillness," he said. For the first time, it doesn't feel like silence. It feels alive. She came to stand beside him, her shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders. The light caught the strands of her hair, turning them to threads of fire. For a while, they stood without speaking, the only sound the whisper of wind through the grass. The forest seemed to breathe in unison with them, every leaf shimmering with dew. "It's strange," Arya murmured. "Everything feels the same, yet it isn't. Like the world remembers what it was, but not how it got here." Cale nodded slowly. "Maybe that's what healing feels like. It doesn't erase the pain. It just teaches you to live beside it." Her hand brushed against his, fingers grazing. "And what about you? Have you learned to live beside yours?" He turned to her, his eyes softer now, no longer the fierce gold of the alpha, but warm, human, alive. "I'm still learning," he admitted. "But I think I'm starting to understand something you've known all along." "And what's that?" "And that love isn't what saves us," he said quietly. "It's what reminds us to keep saving ourselves." Her breath caught slightly, the truth of it sinking deep. She reached up, her palm resting over his heart. The steady rhythm beneath her fingers felt strong, certain. "Certain. Then keep reminding me," she whispered. He covered her hand with his, leaning into her touch. "Always." The sun rose higher, burning away the mist, painting the forest in shades of green and gold. The wolves began to stir in the distance, their howls soft, almost reverent. Life had returned to Eldergrove, though not in the way it had been before. Something greater had been born from the ashes of their pain, a stillness that was not emptiness, but peace. Arya stepped forward, the grass cool beneath her feet. "Do you think they'll remember us?" she asked, watching the light ripple across the trees. Cale followed her gaze. The pack? The forest? The moon? All of it. He considered for a moment, his voice low. The moon never forgets, Arya. It remembers every promise, every heartbreak, every love that ever dared to survive. It will remember us too. She smiled faintly, her eyes shining in the morning light. "Then that's enough." They walked together through the clearing, the air soft with birdsong. The ruins of the stone circle lay ahead, now covered in moss and flowers. The runes that had once glowed with curses were faint, their power spent. Cale knelt, brushing his hand over one of the stones. "It's strange," he said. "For so long, this place was where everything ended. Now it feels like where it begins." Arya knelt beside him, her fingers tracing the same stone. And maybe endings and beginnings are the same thing. Maybe that's why the heart keeps beating. It remembers both. He looked at her then, truly looked, and for the first time in a long while, he saw not the healer who saved him or the Luna who bore his fate, but simply the woman who had taught him how to live. Again. "You were never just my salvation," he said, softly. He said softly. You were my reminder that I was still worth saving. She smiled, tears glinting like sunlight through glass. And you were my proof that even broken hearts can beat again. The forest grew quiet around them, as if listening. A single ray of light fell across their hands, illuminating the faint shimmer of the bond that still connected them, not glowing or burning as before, but pulsing gently, steady, and alive. Kale stood and helped her to her feet. What will we do now? Arya's gaze turned toward the distant hills where the forest met the horizon. We live, we listen. And when the moon calls again, we answer, not in fear, but in love. He smiled, the expression soft and sure. It together? Always, she said, her voice firm, clear as sunlight. They turned toward the path that led deeper into the forest. As they walked, their shadows merged with the golden light, their footsteps fading into the heartbeat of the world around them. The bond between them no longer a curse, but a melody, one that the earth itself seemed to hum in quiet harmony. The wind carried their laughter through the trees, weaving it into the song of the forest. Overhead, the moon lingered faintly in the blue morning sky, watching, remembering. And somewhere in the quiet between heartbeats, love began again.